Hello and welcome to another Pauper video. Today, instead of playing a league, we're going to go into a big old deep dive about familiars. How does the deck work? What does it do? What is it all about? How do you play it? Those kinds of things. We're also going to check out the history of it at some point and hope you enjoy. So if you like this, definitely hit me up with a like and subscribe. Let me know if you want to see a deep dive into a different deck. And check out the Patreon where I have the full sideboard guide for this specific version that you're seeing here, and some primers as well. So, what is Familiars? Familiars works off of the cost reducer Sunscape Familiar, which is the namesake of the card. It says green and blue spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. So if you look at the deck, we've got basically a blue deck that's splashing white. So what are we splashing white for? Specifically Sunscape Familiar. We're also playing God Pharaoh's Faithful, Ephemerate, and some copies of Prismatic Strands in the main deck. In the sideboard, we're playing some copies of anti-affinity cards with Dust to Dust, Revoke Existence, and a Last Breath, which is our removal spell. But we'll talk about that in a little bit. So we're a blue deck splashing white. So basically, the Sunscape Familiar is turning all of our blue cards into lower and lower mana curve. So something like a Muldrifter, instead of costing 5 mana, is going to cost 4 mana with 1 Familiar in play. Or cost 3 mana, and then you can evoke it for 2 mana and a blue. So if you have 2 Familiars in play, you can evoke it for 1 mana. So it becomes a 1 mana draw 2, right? That's very good. Now when you have a 1 mana draw 2, you can combine that with cost reducing our card Ghostly Flicker here, and then for blue, we can evoke and flicker Muldrifter. That's really good rate, obviously. So the cost reduction here gives us some combos. Ghostly Flicker says exile 2 artifacts or creatures or lands you control, then return those cards to the battlefield under your control. Because we can exile lands, this enables some combos with Archaeomancer, which says when it enters the battlefield, return target instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. So Archaeomancer, Ghostly Flicker targeting Archaeomancer and targeting Island. When you have 2 Familiars in play, Ghostly Flicker costs 1 mana. Okay? So Flicker, Island, get back Flicker with the Archaeomancer. This gives you triggers. So we're doing infinite mana neutral casts of Ghostly Flicker, returning Archaeomancer to the battlefield. Sage's Denizen is the main combo piece. It says whenever another blue creature enters the battlefield under your control, target player mills 2 cards. So with 2 Familiars in play, Ghostly Flicker costs 1 mana, which we can use the 1 island for at a mana neutral infinite loop, which will mill out our opponent. Now, that obviously is our win condition, sort of high mana value, but we're also playing this card God Pharaoh's Faithful in the main deck, which says whenever you cast a blue, black, or red spell, you gain a life. So pretty much our entire deck is blue, right? We are going to be gaining life when we're casting any of our cards. So if you have 2 Familiars in play, this gives you infinite life, even before you have the Sage's Denizen. A lot of times in paper play, you can just go make infinite life or make 100 billion life. Your opponent can't win from that spot, so they could concede. If you have more cards in the library than your opponent does, then they will concede from there. But God Pharaoh's Faithful is a pretty interesting card because 420 Dragon was the one that created or put this into the Familiars deck, and God Pharaoh's Faithful is essentially a soft removal spell. As an 0/4, it's going to be blocking a lot of things on the ground, so it's going to be able to create removal on the fly. And then if you have 2 of them in play, every single blue spell you cast is +2 life. 3 of them in play is +3 life, obviously. So it's like an anti-lightning bolt from all the cards that you're casting. And then Ephemerate here, which is a relatively new card to the deck from Modern Horizons 1. It says exile target creature you control, then return to the battlefield under its owner control, and has rebound. So you can use Ephemerate by itself to flicker your Archaeomancer and return a spell, and then on your upkeep it will flicker again and return itself. So with 1 Archaeomancer, you're getting back all of your spells. We used to play 3 flickers in the main deck and no ephemerates before ephemerate came out and before we realized how good it was. And now ephemerate can be your main like stall condition, so that will do most of the heavy lifting for you. Eventually find the flicker and flicker your opponent out. Some decks are playing a little different amounts of flickers or ephemerates and stuff, but this is the list that I like to play specifically. We're playing Preordain because it's the best blue cantrip. We're not playing something like Brainstorm because we don't really need that to like hand fix. We just need to find the next thing to do the more actions basically. We're just going to be concentrating on taking actions. Prohibit I like in the main deck because Prohibit can counter Spellstutter Sprite and most of the format. And then in this deck here, I'm playing 2 Lose Focus because Lose Focus can counter initiative creatures and can counter all the spells out of the Ponza deck. In this deck, I'm also playing 4 Evolving Wilds in the main deck so that we can play them on turn 1, pass the turn, not get our land blown up, fetch end step, and then untap with a counterspell open. And then one of the relatively new cards to the deck is the Modern Age, which is a saga that says chapters 1 and 2 are draw a card and discard a card, and chapter 3 is to exile it and return it to the battlefield as a 2/3 flyer. This makes your deck really, really good against flying decks because you're getting deeper into your deck, you're doing some looting, and you're also putting up a huge body. But the Modern Age is really important for familiars because we have huge draw spells in Muldrifter and Deep Analysis, and we tend to flood out, so the Modern Age can actually fix the flooding. So what I like to do is play it out as soon as possible and then just start looting. I believe LSV said, when should you loot? You should always loot because you're always going to make your hand better. There are certainly times like it's going to be a feel bad, like if you play it on 0 cards in hand, etc., but it's going to be better to just keep digging. And in Pauper right now, I found that what you want to be doing is just more actions and faster. So that is why I'm playing the Modern Age plus Deep Analysis. I like that. I'm also playing 1 Prismatic Strands in the main deck. Modern Age can pitch Prismatic Strands on turn 2, so you can untap, play something like Sunscape Familiar on turn 3, holding open the free spell counter with Prismatic Strands and keep doing stuff. So Deep Analysis is an OG card for the archetype where you draw 2 cards and then flashback 1 in a blue, pay 3 life. Modern Age can pitch this on turn 2, so you can go turn 3 Familiar, draw another 2 cards and use all your mana, or you can save it and draw 4 cards total and push through counterspell type decks. One of the other cool things in the deck is Mortuary Mire, which says when it enters the battlefield, you can put a creature from your graveyard on top of your library. So this gives us a way to never deck out, technically, because you can Ghostly Flicker your land, right? You can flicker Mortuary Mire and Arcanomancer, and always put a creature back on top of your library. So at the end of the game, when you're almost on 0, you just snap your Godfarrow's Faithfuls to hand, and then you discard them to hand size and put them back on top of Mortuary Mire. I did not cover Snap, but Snap is one of the main engine cards of the deck. It says return target creature to its owner's hand, untap up to 2 lands. And the lands that we really want to untap are Azorius Chancery, because it makes 2 mana. So if you have 2 of these in play and no familiars, Snap is going to be +2 mana, so it's like a Dark Ritual. Very, very good. When you have 1 familiar in play, you can create an infinite Snap loop by going Ghostly Flicker, targeting your 2 Arcanomancers, getting back Snap, and snapping a creature, as long as you have a Chancery and an island. If you have 2 Chanceries, it's even more. So what you like to think about here, and what Raptor56 told me, was that, okay, this in total costs 5 mana, because we have 2 in a blue and 1 in a blue. Sunscape Familiar is going to reduce each of these cards by 1, so it's going to cost 1 in a blue and a blue. That's 3 mana, which you can make off of Chancery and Island. With 2 Familiars in play, it's hyper easy, because you can just Ghostly Flicker and Snap off 2 islands. No big deal. I should be playing... Okay. Got confused there. I thought I was not playing 21 lands, but we are playing 21 lands. That covers the main deck here. So let's go and demonstrate some combos. So here I have the whole setup going. I've got Ghostly Flicker in hand, got Sage's Rodenizen in hand. I also have my Ephemerates. What you want to do, we've got 2 familiars in play and our Archaeomancer. We play our Sage's Rodenizen for 1 mana. We're going to tap an island, Ghostly Flicker, Archaeomancer, and island. And then we're going to target the Flicker. And then on Magic Online, what you can do is you right-click the Sage's Rodenizen, hit Save Targets, point it at your opponent. And then from there, now the targets are saved, which you can see by this triangle. Hit Always Yield. And now every time we flicker, we're going to untap an island. Doot. And then we're going to get back our flicker. So you can see we're getting milled out here. Now, if I wanted to, I could use the blue flicker. And I'm going to put the mill first on me. And then get back this flicker. I messed that up. Anyway, so we're going to put the Faithful on top. And you can see the Faithful is going to go on top. Say yes, and then put the Faithful in the graveyard. In this scenario, it's a little bit confusing, but that allows you to put the Faithful on top forever. One of the interface usage things that you really want to do is go here, turn off Enable Animations. Let's turn it on so you can see. Flicker here. You can see that the Ghostly Flicker zooms around the battlefield. Triggers are zooming around. It takes quite a long time for all these actions to take place. Now if I turn off the animations, it just clicks into place. No big deal. Almost no time. Clicking around, making it happen. So that is the infinite mill the easy way. So now if we snap this Sunscape Familiar, now we have 1 familiar in play. So we can't Ghostly Flicker Archaeomancer to make an infinite mill combo, right? But we do have what I was talking about with the infinite snaps, because we have our Chanceries, we have Ghostly Flicker, and we have Snap in the graveyard. So we can Ghostly Flicker these 2 Archaeomancers using mana from the Chancery, return the Snap. We get 2 Sage's Rodenizen triggers, and then we can snap. So we just go ahead and snap a Vector Glider. We started out with 6 mana. We're actually going to make 1 mana because we have 2 Chanceries. But what we can do is just tap Chancery and Island. We had 6 mana, flicker these 2, get back the snap, get back the flicker, and we will snap another creature. And you can see that we once again have 6 mana. In this scenario, when you have 2 Chanceries in play, you can actually play out your God Pharaoh's Faithful and have infinite mill as well. So we have the 1 familiar, we have 1 Faithful. Ghostly Flicker plus Snap costs 3 mana, and we can make 4 mana, which means we can replay the Faithful. So we tap, we have 4, let's go back. We had 5 mana total. We're going to Flicker, Chancery, or the 2 Archaeomancers. Go ahead and get back the Snap, get back the Flicker. We're going to snap the Faithful, untap these 2, and replay the Faithful. So now we're getting all the triggers and the Faithful for life gain, and everything has come back into play. That is our infinite loop. Of note, what you want to be doing is setting your trigger windows in the right spots. Let me just play out the familiar again. Turn off my auto yields. So when I'm flickering Archaeomancer and Island, first thing you want to do is always yield to your Faithful. That's going to save you a ton of time. And then you can see that my triggered abilities are down here where the flicker is going to be. So I'll do my and save targets to me, always yield. Or first we have to click this. And we're going to always yield here and always yield here. Zooms right in. Easy peasy. The other thing that we can do is we can make our actual comboing faster by flickering and untapping all of our islands, like this. over a period of time. Because what you're doing is this speed here is based on having your just clicks be faster. So what we want to do is spam click all of these islands, ghostly flicker the island to untap it, and we're going to untap them all one by one. Flicker, flicker. So no big deal. Go ahead and untap all of our islands. Let me just untap them. So one thing you can see is that with the God Pharaoh's Faithful in play, all these actions are actually taking a long time. We are gaining life, but we have to keep responding. Because the Faithful trigger goes on the stack, we get priority back. So we're going to just flicker here, and then untap, get back our snap, and the flicker. Oh, I forgot to say, so we're going to snap this Faithful, and then untap. But with regards to the trigger windows, now we're going to flicker here. You can see that there's no pause. We don't have to respond. And the stack window is we're going to put up here instead of down in the same spot as the trigger window. This makes it so that when you are doing something like clicking your triggers, let's undo, cancel. So let's say I click the Sage of Denizen trigger first. If these are in the same spot, it's really hard to click the Archaeomancer trigger, so you want to put your stack up here, your other thing down here. Now, if the ghostly flickers are up here, you don't have very much graveyard, you can put the stacks in a different spot. And that is how you set up your section. The other thing that we can do is demonstrate the Prosperous Pirates combo. So I'll go ahead and do that. Okay, we're in a position here. Now we can play the Prosperous Pirates. Comes into the battlefield and makes 2 treasures. So then we can use our 1 treasure to flicker Prosperous Pirates and Archaeomancer. That gives us 2 more treasures. And then we can use the treasure to flicker it again, which gives us 2 more treasures. So you can see that we went from 3 to 4, and then 5, flickering and untapping. Flicker, flicker. That gives us infinite treasures. And then at some point we can ghostly flicker, targeting our 2 Archaeomancers, getting back ghostly flicker and my compulsive research, or in paper you can just use this with deep analysis. Then we point compulsive research at our opponent using some of the mana from the pirate, and then we just make them draw their deck. The important thing here is that you want to make infinite mana at the same time. Hold up all of your flickers and hold up all of your counter spells, so that when they actually do respond, you can use your mana to counter their spells. What I like about Prosperous Pirates is that you can turn Lose Focus into counter literally anything. So that's pretty nice in this deck. One thing I also did not really demonstrate was the flicker for the Drifter Snap Drifter. Go snap, and then snap a Drifter so you can see. Okay, so here with a bunch of familiars in play, it doesn't matter that much, but it's just like the ghostly flicker and snap combo, right? This costs 5 total mana. With the Chanceries in play, we're making 4 mana. This is actually just going to cost 2 with the 2 familiars in play. But if you had 1 Chancery and 1 island and 1 familiar in play, Drifter plus snap would be 3 mana, which would be mana neutral. So you can evoke the Drifter, and then go ahead and snap it with the evoke trigger on the stack, untap your lands, bam, you just drew 2 cards for no mana. You did use cards to do it, but you used no mana. So snap can turn into basically anything, which is a really awesome and powerful part of the deck. When you're using your ephemerates in Magic Online, what you want to do is you have to pop out the exile window, because it doesn't automatically pop up. So I like to put it over here over all the game log, so that on upkeep you can click the ephemerate and ephemerate the Archaeomancer. In paper, this is a really easy trigger to miss. So what a lot of people do is they take the ephemerate and they place it on top of their deck, so they know that they don't like draw before they resolve their upkeep ephemerate. I think that generally covers the combo parts of the deck, so let's go ahead and talk about some card choices. Alright, so in the deck we have a bunch of different versions, which you can see here. We've got fairies, Jeskai, rainbow familiars, etc., etc. So rainbow familiars we'll just cover shortly, but rainbow familiars looks to take Sunscape Familiar, cost reduce our Snap and Archaeomancer, so that when you play Archaeomancer plus Snap, you generate mana. So this costs 4, 5, 6 total. So if you have 2 lands that create 7 mana total, then snapping and replaying Archaeomancer will generate you mana. With 1 familiar in play, that cost reduces the Snap and the Archaeomancer both by 1, so your 2 lands have to generate 5 mana. If you have 2 familiars in play, your 2 lands have to generate 4 mana. And if they can generate 4 total blue, then that means you're making infinite blue mana. And at that point, you can Ghostly Flicker your Archaeomancer and your Mulldrifter, draw your deck, and then find your Compulsive Research and shoot your opponent, just like with the Pirates familiars. Over here, you've got a bunch of different versions of familiars. I do like playing this TMA DA list specifically the most, just for consistency on my end. But you've got also the ability to play something like Destroy Evil. Destroy Evil is cool because it can blow up a big creature or an enchantment. One of the things that we're trying to figure out right now is whether or not Meeting the Minds is good. Meeting the Minds is Convoke, draw 2 cards. And you can cast this for free a lot of the time, which is awesome. But if you can't cast it for free, it can be kind of a risky play. So we were talking about doing something like mixing the Modern Age and Seagate Oracle and Meeting Minds all together to draw those cards. As far as your fetch lands go, the Broker's Hideout or Obscura Storefront type things enter the battlefield and sacrifice for 1 life. So that can be useful, but now it looks like with Ponza in the metagame as a big player, we probably want to be on Evolving Wilds. Seagate Oracle. Seagate Oracle looks at the top 2 cards of your library, puts 1 in your hand and the other on the bottom of your library. This card is really good for, obviously, just being a flickerable target, lots of value. It's a good blocker in the ground, and it's like really good at managing Kuldotha tokens and stuff. It's not very good versus fairies, even though it can block a ninja, just because it's a bit slow and it doesn't block flyers whatsoever. Obviously, Modern Age is also slow, but blocking flyers is huge for me. So, sideboard-wise, we are looking at lots of Dust to Dust for Affinity. Hydroblast. I think 4 Hydroblast is probably fine as far as the red decks go. And then I like playing 2 Negates here. Negate over Dispel because Negate can be cost reduced pretty easily and ends up being simply better Dispel. Negate is also useful against things like Bogles or Lead the Stampede, and Dispel is obviously not. I like to have some sort of catch-all counterspell in the sideboard. Counterspell in this case, my TMA DA one here, I'm playing Exclude. And these are for the Monarch type cards or big creatures. And in this specific list, it would be for the initiative as well. Last Breath here is for fairies and can also be extremely good versus walls and versus elves. So I really like it there. And then Revoke Existence is just our next versions of Dust to Dust that are not as good. Before playing Revoke Existence, we played something cool. Played Nature's Chant, which is 1 and a green-white hybrid for destroy target artifact or enchantment. And since this is a green, it actually gets cost reduced by Sunscape Familiar, because Sunscape Familiar reduces green and blue spells, not just blue spells. So you can cast this for just white when you have a familiar in play. That did come up sometimes. I think that covers everything for the specific current version. If you're interested in more card choice questions, just leave me a comment in the YouTube video and I'll get back to you and we'll figure that out. But right now, let's go through sort of the history of the deck and how it evolved. So the first Familiars deck that I could find on Goldfish was from 420 Dragon, and he was playing, this is a Treasure Cruise Cloud of Fairies deck. We've got 6 6 bounce lands. So if you're flickering Wall, Cloud of Fairies, you're untapping your bounce lands, making infinite mana, and then eventually just doming your opponent with Torch here, which is pretty sweet. Now, that evolved a little bit. This is his second Cloud of Fairies deck with 7 familiars, still Cloud of Fairies, still 6 bounce lands, but the win condition here is just compulsive research, it looks like, and Sage's Rodenizen as the actual win condition. So he's eventually going to draw into Sage's Rodenizen after making infinite mana and drawing all his cards. Pretty sick as well. Where's B? So from there, with Cloud of Fairies banned, we end up in this position where the Familiars deck was when I first saw it. So this is the 4 Sunscape Familiar deck with 4 Godpharaoh's Faithful and 4 Drifter. This is just like a straight up value deck. We got 4 Seagate Oracles, 4 Deep Analysis, 4 Mole Drifter, and you can see that there's a couple 1-ofs in the main deck with 1 Negate, 1 Stonehorn, and 1 Serrated Arrows. I believe Serrated Arrows was used for fairies, which makes sense. Stonehorn Dignitary was a Mize 1-of, and Negate was a Mize 1-of. Now I've decided, like for my list, that I would rather just be on a lot more counterspells because I feel like it's pretty good. But this is where they were back in the day when I first started paying attention to the Familiars deck. When I first started really getting into Familiars, this was the Astrolabe deck by I don't know why there's 20 more. There we go, 19 lands. This deck was from Entropy 263, Burbman, playing 4 Arkham's Astrolabe and Mystic Sanctuary. So the way this deck works is you have Iceberg Cancrix in play, and then you can Ghostly Flicker your artifacts or creatures or lands. So you flicker your Astrolabe and your Sanctuary, you redraw the flicker, and you mill your opponent. Pretty sick. Just an infinite combo. And this can actually win on turn 4 because Astrolabe can make any color of mana. So you go turn 1 Astrolabe, turn 2 Familiar, turn 3 Familiar, start flickering. Pretty crazy. I love that deck. So once Astrolabe got banned, this was where I was at for my first 5-0 with Familiars, playing a single Mnemonic Wall, some Stonehorn Dignitaries. But once again, Ghostly Flicker is actually all you need combined with Mystic Sanctuary to actually win the game. Mystic Sanctuary puts a instant or sorcery card from your graveyard on top of your library, and you can flicker Muldrifter Sanctuary to draw your deck, which is awesome. Man, that deck was sweet. From that position, this evolved into my challenge or Pauper Showcase Finals winning deck, I think, or the one that got me into the finals, with going down on snaps. But this is like a Prismatic Strands deck, which is really good against Stompy at the time and Bogles. And there's not even there's 0 Mnemonic Walls or Arcane Masters in this deck, just tons of value cards, and using Godpharaoh's Faithful and Prismatic Strands to buy time with 6 cantrips. And then you eventually find Flicker, Sanctuary, and Muldrifter, draw your deck, play your Sage's Rodenizen, and mill out your opponent, which was pretty sweet. From there, we're just in the same position now where there's a couple of different options, but that's where we are. So Meeting of the Minds. So this deck here, right, Meeting of the Minds, we got 4 of them, we got 4 Seagate Oracle. I think this deck is very strong, but the issue is that you don't have interaction for your flying creatures, which means you get steamrolled by mono blue fairies. And since that's a large portion of the metagame, that's why I'm not really interested in playing all ground Meeting of the Minds anymore. This was more of a list that was played before Meeting of the Minds existed with Modern Age, Seagate Oracle. With all of these together, Modern Age is sort of like a 7 cantrip list and can work pretty well. But with the total of 4 flicker effects with 2 flickers and 2 ephemerates, you have a lot more options to flicker through your deck and make the deck work that way. So you have a little bit more power versus fairies. I still personally prefer having Deep Analysis in the deck because it's just very strong. Right. Looking over, here's another list I tried without even playing any preordained. So we're playing Modern Ages, Seagate Oracle, Meeting of Minds, just doing tons of stuff. But one of the cards we didn't talk about yet was Dawnbringer Cleric, which can gain life, destroy enchantments, or exile a card from a graveyard. It's very good as an additional copy of Godpharaoh's Faithful in the deck. It's also extremely good versus Bogles, so if you have a lot of Bogles in your metagame, Dawnbringer Cleric is definitely for you. In the Counterspell suite, we talked about Prohibit and Loose Focus. Remove Soul is also something that I've played in the past for countering creatures. You can also play something like Counterspell in the main deck we talked about. I think we've kind of covered everything. Like I said, if you have questions on the sideboard, let me know. And we will go ahead and pop out a league coming up. Probably not the same day that this posts. And I hope you enjoyed this full overview. We're going to get into some Q&A that people have asked me on Twitter and in the Discord and go through that. So the first card that someone asked me to talk about was Rashadan Cutpurse from Pyotr Pavel. It says when it enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a permanent unless they pay one. So you just try to get this into play and then wipe all your opponent's permanents. It could be pretty good in a Prosperous Pirates build where you draw your deck and then make them go to 0 permanents at infinite. I could see that. It's not something that I've been interested in playing, but he actually did get a couple 5-0s with this posted, so it does work. Chronicle asked me what I would play in paper, and I think I would still probably play this TMA-DA list, but you could play it with Prosperous Pirates. So it would look something like this, where instead of Compulsive Research, you'd be playing the Deep Analysis here. We play 2 Flickers specifically because we want to be able to actually hit our Flicker combo. And an additional combo here is with 1 Sunscape and Familiar in play, it's going to make Flicker cost 2, but Prosperous Pirates creates 2 treasure tokens. So with only 1 Familiar in play, you have infinite Flickers on Archaimancer and Pirates, which means you have infinite life if you have 1 Faithful in play. This is something that I really like more I like as well for paper play, where Godpharaoh's Faithful Infinite Life can actually win you a lot of games, so I like that. Additionally, when you start to go to turns, if you make infinite mana, you can win the game on the spot, and I think that that's pretty important for paper play. So that's why I like doing this specifically, because Prosperous Pirates gives you an additional infinite life plan, which can win the game. And then if you have Deep Analysis, you can win the game on the spot as well. Last question was, how can we play this like you and be a master? I think that comes down to knowing your game plans. So let's go ahead and get into some of the meta decks and try to figure out how is a Familiars player going to approach those decks. So the first deck that we're going to look at here is the Burn deck. This specific one is your Pinger Burn with Monastery Swiftspear and Kessick Flame Breather Thermo Alchemist. This deck is just looking to get you dead quick by landing a Pinger or Swiftspear and start to burn you out, so that every single lightning bolt is going to be turning into a plus, just straight up Galblast and then dealing more damage. What you want to be doing is trying to Hydroblast or Snap their 2-mana plays, and definitely try to Hydroblast a Swiftspear. At a certain point, you are going to be able to put enough creatures onto the battlefield to block, and then try to just outvalue them. The issue here is that our opponent has 8 draw 2s with an additional draw 2 with the Synthesizer, so it's definitely a difficult deck to play against. Got to look out for these raises because they're going to be bringing them in against you, but Relic of Progenitus doesn't do that much. It kind of just slows them down so you don't have to worry about it. I think if you're using your Hydroblast, the important cards are the creatures. Swiftspear, you may not have to Hydroblast, but in the early game, you really do want to. In the late game, you really got to stop these ones. And then if they're low on cards and you're high on Hydroblast and counterspells, you can start countering all of their card draw. Gruul Ponza here. Ugh, the worst. Call your local PFP representative, tell them to ban the initiative. Terrible. Terrible play patterns. But what you want to be doing is trying to counter their early Thermokarst and Acid Moss, and using your loose focuses to try to counter both all their big stuff. So like if they play a boarding party and they tap out for it, you can actually loose focus the boarding party and the cascaded spell. So that can be a very strong play. You really get hosed when they go out the store, into boarding party, into Avenging Hunter. And we all know that that's what they're going for. For Affinity, the main thing we have to worry about is the Krark-Clan Shaman in the main deck. Because Krark-Clan Shaman is wiping the ground creatures, it's actually getting rid of our Sunscape Familiar, which is a big problem. So we have to try to leverage our Prismatic Strands in the main deck. Also look out for Metallic Ryuks. And then post board, we are bringing in our 4 Dust to Dust and 2 or 3 Revoke Existences. So you're generally going to be looking to mulligan 2 a Dust to Dust or Revoke Existence. Remember that you can just have 1 Plains in play because Snap can untap that Plains. So if you find a target, you can have 3 mana, like blue, blue, white, tap them all for mana, use blue, blue to cast Snap, untapping Plains Island, then tap Island Plains, and then slam that Dust to Dust. It's kind of funny that I really hate Ponza, but versus Affinity, I don't care. I'm going to Ponza them out. Versus Bogles, we're going to be looking to bring in our negates, and we're going to bring in our Revoke Existences and stuff, and try to keep them off of their big payoff spells with Ethereal Armor and Ancestral Mask. These are the things that are going to be dealing us the most damage. You also have to look out for ram-throughs, so if they have Trample, got to look out for that. We just get to the position where we eventually lock them out of the game, basically. Versus Jeskai Ephemerate, this is a deck that's fighting on the stack mostly and using a Cleansing Wildfire, but it doesn't really matter that much to us. We got to watch out for all their Pyroblasts in the sideboard, and then sometimes Tormod's Crypt can matter, but not usually. So you're going to be wanting to bring in all of your stack interactions. So all negates, dispels, etc. that you have. Exclude is very good, and then Hydroblast as well. And then post board against decks that are controlling decks, these kinds of cards are not useful. So that's 5 slots that you have open. You can also get rid of something like Echoing Truth and some number of snaps, because you're not really going to be wanting to snap their creatures. And this opens up a ton of slots for stack interaction for you to try to win the game. Basically, we just try to be a better controlling deck because our mana is more consistent and not run Chancery out into a Wildfire. Versus Wildfire decks, you want to be playing your island on turn 1, holding up Hydroblast so that you can try to counterspell their Wildfire if possible. Alright, Walls Combo. Somehow another one of my decks that I like facing the least. They always seem to have it. But their Overgrown Battlement and Axebane Guardian have to tap to make mana for them. So your best situation is where you actually have Archaeomancer plus Ephemerate plus Snap. So you're just going to continuously Ephemerate and zap off their big mana creature. Post board, we've got 2 Last Breaths and 1 Exclude, as well as 2 Negates. These all can come in. And then we're just going to be getting rid of all of our Faithfuls and the Prismatic Strands. If you have extra to bring in, you can also get rid of Sagedraw Denizen potentially, but just going to try to counter them out and kill everything. The Last Breaths are focusing mostly on their big mana creatures, as well as you can try to stop them from having blue mana. Most of their payoffs cost actual colored mana, so if you can keep them off of their Axebane Guardian and keep them off of their Caretakers, then they can't do very much. They usually don't have that many leaf colors, but if you see that, you might have to kill that as well. Our negates that we bring in, like I said, can counter Lead the Stampede, can also counter their Winding Ways, and getting rid of their card draw is pretty useful. Post board, Hydroblast can hit the Valakut Invoker or the Tuk Tuk. I would bring that in if I have nothing else to bring in, but like if I have dead cards of Godfarrow's Faithful and Strands, but it's not something that I'm looking to do immediately. Alright, Mono Blue Fairies, another deck that's pretty rough. So this deck here is looking to play a turn 1 creature with Brine Barrow, Miscreant, or Fairy Seer, and then a turn 2 ninja with Hacker or Ninja the Deep Hours. So your main goal is to set up an early blocker and stop them from getting through. You want to be playing out your Modern Ages early. You got to look out for Spell Pierces, unfortunately, but this deck doesn't even play Spell Pierce. They're playing some Force Spikes. Okay. No Spell Pierce. Okay, good to know. But you want to get your Modern Ages on the battlefield for blockers for their flyers. God-Pharaoh's Faithful is also extremely important because they're really kind of a slow deck as far as their actual damage is, and God-Pharaoh's Faithful can stop them from really wrecking us. So I like to get God-Pharaoh's Faithfuls and Sunscapes down early, try to get Modern Age down, and then Deep Analysis to force through. Eventually Muldrifter, and then just lock up the air and win the game. This is another matchup where Last Breath is also really good, and it's one of the cards that I was originally bringing in specifically for fairies because it can eat a turn 2 ninja. So if they tap out for ninja on turn 2 and have no other play, it's like they play out their Ninja the Deep Hours, you could snap the Ninja the Deep Hours and then really tempo them quite a bit. So this is the Dimir Terror Angler deck. And this deck is pretty brutal because it's got 1,000,000 interactions pieces plus 4 snuff outs. Snuff out for our familiars or our blockers and stuff. Really hard to beat. What you want to be doing is trying to use your flyers to pressure them while adding to the board. And then in this deck, we can use Loose Focus and Exclude to counter their big creatures, and Negate to counter their snuff outs and stuff. So Prismatic Strands can be used to block all of the terror damage, and then we can use Snap to get rid of their anglers. You want to try to get them into a position where they are like on the back foot, having to use their anglers, eating their graveyard, and then you snap the angler away and make them do it again, which has been pretty good. So versus Orzhov or Gardens, you basically want to be focused on not letting their initiative resolve, which is why Loose Focus and Exclude are also very good. And then, versus this deck, you're going to be looking out for Dawnbringer Cleric eating the stuff in the graveyard. Versus Gardens, you have to be worried about not only the initiative, but also Crypt Rats. But the main thing that we want to do is not allow them to resolve their emblem creatures. Because once they have the emblem, we obviously are not really good at taking them back. Although the Modern Age is relatively good at taking back the emblems, it's definitely a scary position for us. So once again, that is why I'm playing the Loose Focuses and the Excludes. I think that's a pretty good meta call in this current environment. What? So this is Scapeshift, huh? Somebody named their deck pretty weird. But Sunscape Familiar is obviously indicating that this is a mirror. In the mirror, you want to be using your Last Breath to exile your Sunscape Familiars from the opponent, and then sneak in your combo kill. We definitely do not need any Faithfuls or Strands post-board, so you can bring in all your interaction. And in this one, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so it's kind of a hot swap. Pretty easy. Wow, that was a lot to talk about. I hope you learned something or anything. And if you have any questions, hit me up. This will probably go up as the new pinned video. And one of the other things that I forgot to talk about, but it's very important, is to check out the hotkeys. So we go to the input settings. I have yes set to 3, no set to 4, and OK set to 2. So I can just put my hand on the keyboard, and then you can see that I'm not clicking around and pressing the OK key. Hopefully you stuck around for that, but most people already know that. Once again, hit me up for the like and subscribe. Check out the Patreon, patreon.com/CaliKais. I hope you have an awesome day. We'll see you in the next video.